All right, what's going on, everybody? Hope you're all enjoying your Monday. It's once again time for Keeping It Sports with M3 via Facebook Live, as well as you can catch the podcast version of this a little bit later on the Anchor app via anchor.fm/M3's opinion. Hope you're all enjoying your day. Hope you all had a great weekend. Just another week, a little more sports therapy here as I do every week. Things talk about surprisingly, it's funny through all of this, in a time when there is no live sports going on, there's still been so much to talk about. There's still been so much to so many interesting topics to discuss, give thoughts and opinions about, and a lot of things I'm going to get to throughout this podcast, whether it be, with the NFL and some of the quarterback stuff, NBA, will they return? Will they not return? Who is it going to have a great effect on? And maybe some baseball as well. But of course, got to start off each week, the last 2 weeks, and what is quickly becoming the quickest 2 hours in all of our week. Every Sunday night, watching The Last Dance on ESPN last night with parts 5 and 6. And for those of you out there who hate Michael Jordan, who thought that, oh, this is too slanted his way, due to the fact that he had producing rights over it, what it was picturing him in too positive a light. Well, guess what? Last night was your pound of flesh. Last night was the night where Jordan didn't come off looking the greatest, at least off the court, at least as an actual person, on the court. And I love how they do this, how each episode starts off with continuing the clock, continuing the calendar of that 1998 season. You get a little snippet there for about 15 minutes before going to how we got here, going to all of the years building up from him being drafted to his rookie year, playing through injuries, having to overcome the Pistons. Well, last night, they open up with that 98 All-Star game, his final All-Star game as a member of the Chicago Bulls. And you see almost that passing the torch moment between him and Kobe Bryant, not just the one-on-one matchup on the court, but the fact that from that they developed a relationship off the court. Kobe, and this was so surreal seeing Kobe Bryant part of this. I mean, that is, if I'm starting a list in order, chronological order of why 2020 has sucked so far, of course that's the first thing on the list, losing Kobe Bryant, him passing away way too early an age. And so seeing him part of this, just about 3 months after he passed away, just was kind of a strange feeling. But I'm thankful that this was put together before that happened, so we got to hear from Kobe, his thoughts on Michael, thoughts on their relationship, and how much of an impact, how much of a mentor he became to him. Because most of us saw Michael's speech, his tribute to Kobe Bryant at the funeral, but we didn't haven't heard Kobe and how much MJ meant to him. There were bits and pieces over the years we've heard, but to hear those words, him saying how he wouldn't have 5 rings without Michael. He wouldn't have those 5 championships without him, and how much of a close bond, close relationship they developed. Because this was at a point where Michael didn't have that close relationship with many of his peers, because a lot of his peers had, from his group, had started to disappear, had started to retire. Bird and Magic had been gone at this point. Isiah had left. Barkley. The only one of his true, the only 2 of his true peers left. Of course, he had Patrick Ewing there, and of course the Admiral Dave Robinson, but not many of the guys he came in with were still in. So he was looking to form that bond, that relationship with the younger players. And you see him joking around with Kobe and Shaq before that All-Star game, showed you the bond he developed with those guys. And from there, we would take a rewind back to when Michael exploded as far as his popularity off the court. And, if you're sitting here today, if you're a member of, Converse, if you work for Adidas, you're sitting here today with another painful reminder of what could have been. Because you think back to then, Converse had, Magic, Larry, Isiah. We saw that infamous commercial of theirs from back in the 80s. Michael wanted to come out of college, sign a deal with Adidas, but they didn't want to give a whole brand to a guy who was unproven at that time and had to be persuaded by his parents, and particularly his mother, to go meet with Nike and eventually sign the deal. And it exploded from there. They had record-setting sales in the first year, something that had never been seen before. And he, just redefined the whole let me get the word out correctly, industry, with how, you had shoe brands that represented leagues, but you never had a shoe brand that represented one individual player in that fashion. And that kind of became the beginning of the culture of, hey, I want to be like Mike. Between Nike, between Gatorade, he became the most popular athlete in American sports, hell, probably in all of sports across the world. Now, you do get, if you're a Knicks fan, you get some painful reminders on just how belittled your organization was by this guy over the years. Not just, the playoff losses, 93, 97, but also how, quite frankly, the Knicks kind of kissed his ass at times. Whether it be, last night during the show, their Twitter account is tweeting out pictures of him at the Garden, paying homage to him with, goat emojis in the tweets. Or the commercial that Michael shot with Spike Lee back in the late 80s or early 90s, which, respect Spike's passion as a Knicks fan, but that's a moment where he comes off as a little bit of a hypocrite when you look back. Here's a guy that's a die-in-the-wolves Knicks fan, and he's filming a commercial with a guy that would go on to embarrass and utterly harass your team on the court. I mean, he talked about how MSG was his favorite place to play. Well, he showed that when in his final game at MSG in '98, he wears the original Air Jordans, and his feet are bloody. He's in so much pain during it, but he's playing phenomenal and refuses to take the shoes off. Refuses because he was on a roll, and everyone's going to every great athlete like that is going to try and play through that kind of probably excruciating pain when you're just playing on an inhumane level at that time, when you're playing and just absolutely dominating the competition. But if you're a Knicks fan, you had to be bothered with some of the things you saw from that last night, between seeing the commercial with Spike Lee, seeing him wear the original Air Jordans in his final game at MSG, to then having to relive that '93 Eastern Conference final, where he gave you the ultimate tease. You had a 2-0 lead, and thanks to off-the-court motivation, which I'll get to in a couple minutes, he comes back and just trounces you. And the funny thing is, anytime he's come back to the Garden, post-playing days, or even when he was playing for the Wizards, he gets standing ovations from him. And how in the world, you got to respect the guy, but how in the world are you giving the guy a standing ovation when he made your life hell as a fan? Especially, that would be, I'll take you to what was one of the worst moments of my sports fandomhood, to give you an equivalent of that. Many of you know I'm a Jets season ticket holder. Last year, I'm at MetLife Stadium for Monday Night Football, Jets-Patriots, the infamous Sam Darnold sees ghost game. They're getting Jets are getting blown out 33-0 in the fourth quarter, and half the building's empty. Those who are still in the building are chanting Brady, Brady. I mean, that was one of the most embarrassing moments of my life as a sports fan, and that had to be the same for Knicks fans when it came to Jordan. Yet for some reason, all Knicks fans seem to revere the guy, seem to love the guy. Yet you treat people like the late '90s Heat with Alonzo Mourning and that crew, or Reggie Miller and the Pacers like the worst human beings in the world, and you had your moments of winning against them. You never won against Jordan. Jordan, the only time you beat the Bulls was the year he wasn't there. So that had to be a painful remembrance for Knicks fans. The one thing I was interested in seeing, and that I mentioned last night, you finally got your pound of flesh. You finally got your moment where you start to look at, all right, Jordan wasn't as great a guy as the first few episodes were picturing him as. We finally got to talking about the greatest group of basketball players ever put together, the '92 Olympics team, the Dream Team. And this is coming off Michael winning his second title in a row. Being motivated after hearing all the comparisons between him and Clyde Drexler, and essentially laying down the law in game one that he could not be stopped. He's coming off of that, and we of course wanted to hear what's been the biggest story, the biggest rumor surrounding that team since 1992, because that was the greatest collection of basketball players ever put together on one team at that time. You had, what was it, 10, 11 future Hall of Famers playing for that team. The one exception being Christian Laettner, considered the best college player in the country at the time. and the bone of contention by most people, and rightfully so, has been the fact that Leitner was on that team, but Isiah Thomas, one of the 2 or 3 best point guards in the league at the time, was not. And we know the history going back the previous year when the Bulls were pretty pissed off, felt pretty disrespected when the Pistons walked off the court before the game was even over, refusing to shake their hand. And, the rumor since then has always been Michael blocked him from being on that team. And, you heard MJ's comments, talking about saying, hey, I respect Isiah no matter, as a player, no matter how much I hate him. And amongst most professional sports beefs, no matter how much you dislike the guy, you want to kick his ass when you're on the court. I'm sure there's a common bond of respect amongst competitors, but Jordan felt that him not being there created good harmony against for the group, because it wasn't just Michael Jordan that didn't like him. He had issues with Larry Bird, had issues with Scotty, of course, had a fallout in his relationship with Magic Johnson. Most of that team that was put together did not like Isiah Thomas for one reason or another. So, yeah, Isiah, we all agree, definitely deserved to be on that team. But, him being there probably would have caused an eerie presence amongst a bunch of guys that hated his guts at the time. And, yeah, Michael probably played a bigger role than what was shown last night. He gets the phone call originally from Rod Thorne, talking about playing for the Olympics after Team USA had been, embarrassed a couple of times in a row. They felt like, all right, let's pull out the heavy guns here. Let's go with the NBA stars. And he claims his only comments were, who else? Meaning who else was on the team, and he was told, well, not who you're thinking, meaning Isiah. But there was probably more to that. There was probably more of a conversation than just those words about preventing Isiah from playing on that team. And what I love about watching that is seeing the camaraderie built amongst those guys, but also that scrimmage that they played leading up to playing Croatia, where he's getting egged on by Magic and Barkley, leading to him scoring every point and leading a comeback for his team. And that group just built such a close bond of friendship amongst great competitors. But this is where Michael, once again comes off looking bad here when they go to play Croatia. And listen, throughout this entire thing, Jerry Krause looks awful. And, you just wish that he was alive in general, but also so that he could give his point of view, he could give his side, his perspective on all of this, his with everything, announcing that 98 was going to be Phil's last year, and so on and so forth, especially when it comes to when they drafted Tony Kukoc, and he's already talking about him as, the future of the Bulls, when there were plenty of guys on that team that were looking for their payday, looking for their next contract, and he's more focused on this guy. And that led to some anger, some resentment from Michael and Scotty, who clearly, as much as Jerry Krause was their boss, and they tried to make him part of all the celebrations, clearly didn't like him, clearly did not like Krause the way he acted sometimes. And they went about embarrassing Kukoc in that first game against Croatia. Now, you give him credit for rebounding from that and playing well in the gold medal game. But from there, Michaels once again showed a little bit what he was all about beyond just being a player when they were represented by Reebok, and he's covering that up using the U.S. flag. So he's using the U.S. flag to represent himself and cover up a rival promotion there to try and protect his marketing image as a global image, because that would hurt Nike and himself financially if he's seen wearing the Reebok logo on his equipment, on his gear during the post game. But the other part that you get here, and I don't get why this is a problem. I don't get why this is a problem. In fact, these next two things, I don't understand why they're a problem. Number one, the political aspect when it comes to Michael, because he refused to show support for Harvey Gantt from his home area, running up against Jesse Helms in a senatorial race. Lost some credibility amongst the African American community because he didn't view himself as an activist, much like others in the past, like, as he mentioned, Muhammad Ali. And wanted to keep neutral grounds between Democratic and Republican, even going as far as saying Republicans buy sneakers too, even though his mother did some sponsoring for Harvey Gantt as far as commercially, and he helped financially as well. But I don't get. Here's what I don't get. That even as far back as then, he's getting all this crap. He's getting all this ripping from the African American community, and I can understand that for not showing more support for Gantt in a race against Jesse Helms, who, as we would see, is just a flat out racist. I mean, he was someone that essentially he wanted to rewind the clocks to make the area back to more of how racist the world was back in, say the 1950s, 1960s and before. So I can understand them not feeling that he was supporting and not supporting their guy and not supporting the black community. But at the same time, we've seen over the years when athletes, they give their opinion on anything politically, all of a sudden they're looked at as bad guy, bad person. Oh, shame on you. Like, remember last year, Tom Brady had a Make America Great. I'm going to say this again. Make America Great Again hat in his locker. And it's well known that he's buddy, or at least has a good relationship with President Donald Trump, and he got blasted on social media. Why should we care if an athlete has a political stance, and B, what that stance is? No, everybody else in this country is allowed to have their own political freedoms. Why can't he? And when he doesn't give it, he's just looked at as horribly. That I just quite didn't understand. I understand it in the case of supporting a black man against a racist, but in the the broader scheme of it, why he was always criticized for not having a political stance, I quite frankly will never understand. But from there, in the next episode after that, we would go to see why in the 92-93 season, why he was probably pushed by off the court stuff into his eventual first retirement. Because here he is, he wins back-to-back championships. He's got an Olympic gold medal. He's looked at as this American sports hero. Be like Mike. But you have no peace in time, no peace from all day long. From the moment he steps out of his hotel room, he's followed by paparazzi. He gets on the basketball court, plays a game, and then he's sworn by it all the way back to his room. I mean, the only piece in between that he had was, his gambling. The fact that he was competitive at everything. You see him playing cards with teammates, rolling coins with security guys there. Always wanting to be the best at something, and that led to the fact that he was viewed as having such a perfect life. People wanted to look for a flaw, as we do with everybody who seemingly has a perfect life, seemingly is considered this perfect person. There's always flaws that people try to look up, and that was originated by Sam Smith's book, The Jordan Rules, talking about getting quotes from teammates about him being a tyrant in practice. A quote claiming that he was going to get Jerry Krause fired. And a lot of those quotes, many believe, came from Horace Grant out of, jealousy. But Phil Jackson used that book in a team meeting as kind of motivation for the team to try and overcome all of these comments as they were going for something that the legends before Michael that were there when he came in and he took the ball from him and ran with it never did. What Magic and Isiah and company each never done, and that was three-peat. And he has the Eastern Conference Finals against the Knicks. As I said, he toyed with them. Going down 0-2 against the Knicks in the first two games at the Garden. The controversy with him visiting a casino. And, this wouldn't have, in AC, and this wouldn't have been a controversy if they hadn't lost in game 2 and he didn't look gassed in the fourth quarter. But, that this kind of stuff you can get away with when you win. This kind of stuff you can get away with when you're winning. And you see all the media ripping them. All of them. Hell, even a young WFAN host named Mike Francesa makes a brief cameo. What a weird thing that was to see there. You see his associations with guys like Slim Bowler and Richard Eskin. And how they gambled on their golf game and everything. There was probably more to the gambling than we know, but at least Michael didn't run from that, didn't hide from it, because that's part of the story. That's part of what probably pushed him out after 93 when he's getting this onslaught from the media. His dad's now having to answer questions. He's dealing with cheap shots from John Starks, in the first two games. He uses that as the greatest motivation and just decided to kick the Knicks' ass from then on out, including the infamous Charles Smith Memorial game where him, Scotty, and company just were able to prevent 4 layup attempts from Smith at the very end of the game to hold on and win Game 5, and then be motivated once again by going up against Barkley, who he felt stole an MVP award from, averaged 41 points in that series. Michael he looked for every little thing to motivate him, to raise his competition, but that would also leave him to being mentally exhausted, leaving him to be more relief than joy after winning a third straight title. And as I think we're going to come to see next week, the gambling, all the off the court stuff where he's essentially hounded from the moment he leaves his hotel room every day on game day, not having a moment to himself out in public. That probably all wore on him. That is probably, it wasn't about baseball why he retired the first time. We're probably going to see. It was probably all of the outside the basketball court stuff that had him emotionally affected, that he's like, you know what? I got to get away from this. I need a break. And I look forward to seeing how that plays out next week in both episodes 7 and 8 when we continue on, which what I've said is the fastest 2 hours of every one of us this week. But thankfully this isn't going to be 2 hours. It's probably only an hour here, and I still got so much left to talk about, surprisingly. Get to some more thoughts on this in a couple of minutes, as well as some tweets around the sports world to look at who could be affected in a potentially positive way if the NBA season does return this year, mixing some NFL stuff as well along the way here. So, sit back, relax, put your feet up on the table, and continue keeping it sports with M3. That was a long first segment. But what can I say? I love talking. I come from a line of Mike Rosanskis before me who were also big talkers, both my father and grandfather. So, it's in my blood. Why I do this every week. A, career aspirations. B, I love sports. And C, it's just very therapeutic to get my words out there and, talk about stuff, get what goes on in this crazy head when it comes to the sports world out there, and let you hear my thoughts, opinions. If you want to come back at me and debate stuff, you're always more than welcome to. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter at M3Rosansky, as well as at Keeping It Sports for the podcast. Although I don't know why I'm telling you this now. I'm about to regurgitate all of that when I begin segment 2 here in about a minute, once I get done saving that. But hopefully all of you are doing well right now. This, as I said, it's a crazy time, but patience. Patience is the key to everything in life. Well, it sucks. No live sports, no live events, no social distancing. We're getting a little tired of it after 2 months, and you're seeing all the craziness going on in the world right now. We're gonna get back to a positive place eventually. It's just gonna require a little patience, sacrifice, and hopefully sooner rather than later we get back to some shred of what we used to view as normal. But now let's get this going here. Get segment 2 here. All right, welcome back to Keeping It Sports with M3. Remember, if you ever want to get in touch with the podcast here, do so via Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at M3Rosansky, as well as I have a Twitter account set up for the podcast at Keeping It Sports. Send me any questions, comments, thoughts, opinions you have at any time at either one of those, as well as, tell your friends about the Facebook page for the podcast. Facebook.com/Keeping It Sports with M3. You can find the link to the archives of all previous editions of this podcast. That the link currently will lead you to another podcast I do called M3's Opinion, but that's where I've been recording these podcasts lately via the Anchor app. See, if you're watching on Facebook right now, you can see that right now. That's how I'm recording this. It's anchor.fm/M3's Opinion. Go there, check out the podcast, and hey, be a big help to me, big favor to me. Anyone who's listening to the podcast or anyone who's following me on social media, when you see the podcast posted each week, click the share button, because I'm not looking for social media friends, just looking to grow the following here, and you never know who could be listening. Now, talk about the Last Dance a lot the last 3 weeks here. And one of the big stories throughout this has been, of course, Michael Jordan's relationship or lack thereof with Isiah Thomas, to them playing against each other in 3 consecutive Eastern Conference Finals, the physicality he had to deal with from those Piston teams, the disrespect he felt when he finally beat them and they refused to shake him and his teammates' hand, to now what we saw last night with Isiah being left off of the 92 Olympics Dream Team. Well, Isiah has almost been using this time as kind of like his platform, his moment to get back in the sun, to make media appearances on ESPN. I think it was on Good Morning America last week, taking every possible interview request that's out there. And obviously he's got some kind of bone to pick here with Michael, when you consider one of the things he said last week, where he doesn't view Michael as the best player he ever played. In fact, he ranks him 4th on the 5 best players he ever competed against. He has him ahead of Dr. J, but ranks him in order behind number 1, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, number 2, Larry Bird, and number 3, Magic Johnson. Now, let's be clear. Everyone's been ripping him, saying he comes off of as a bit of an ass for that statement, for those comments. The thing, though, you have to remember, it's not like he listed him behind a bunch of, should we say, average players. He didn't list him behind, guys who were NBA players but not all-stars. He didn't list them along with the likes of, he didn't go and say, Bill Walton was a better player that he played against than was Michael Jordan. Or he didn't go list off the 4th best player on the Lakers teams. Yada, yada, yada. He listed 3 all-time greats on there. Now, when he played them, Magic was on his way out the first time after being diagnosed with HIV. Larry Bird was starting to have the back problems, dealing with injury issues, and Kareem was in the second half of his career. He got to face prime time Michael Jordan as he was heading into his prime, not face those guys as they were heading toward the ending parts of his prime, and his as well, with all the injuries he started to deal with there in the 90s. But it does come off as a little bit of sour grapes. And you think about that with the Last Dance. Well, it's provided us a little bit of a filling in what's been an empty time without the sports world. Since that infamous date, March 11th. Coming up in about a week from today will be 2 months since the sports world as we know it was shut down until who knows when. The world as we know it changed as we know it. But the the one person that this airing right now is also taking an effect on, and it probably he doesn't get mentioned at all in this doc because he didn't get to play against Michael, is LeBron. Because LeBron was in the midst of a season in which his Lakers were first place, looked like they were going to be the 1 seed in the Western Conference, have a great shot at winning a championship, and then it all goes away. And now all of a sudden, the ghost that, as he said it, the ghost that he's chasing returns. Returns with a look inside his career, an unprecedented look inside the final year of his legendary career with the Chicago Bulls and all that built up to that moment. And it's captured America. I mean, as I've said, if you're not watching it, I don't know what's wrong with you. And B, if you're watching it and you don't like it, shame on you. This the best part of everyone's week, every Sunday night. It's appointment viewing, and that you can have your little nitpicks, but how you could dislike it is beyond me. So it's once again a moment in time where LeBron feels that his spotlight is being covered up by the shadow of Michael Jordan, a shadow that he'll probably never be able to overcome because people always use against him the fact that Michael has 6 titles, LeBron lost 6 championships. Michael never went to a Game 7 in any of the championships he won, while LeBron has lost a Game 7 in the NBA Finals. Or, had to go to a Game 7 in an NBA Finals against a 73-win Warrior team in which, let's face it, he got some lucky breaks along the way. Took advantage of those breaks, gave him a lot of credit, but he got some lucky breaks when it came to the Draymond Green situation there. Well, LeBron started hearing rumblings, seeing all these reports about people claiming that executives and agents wanted to cancel the rest of the season, and he responded with a tweet on Thursday saying, quote, "Saw some reports about executives and agents wanting to cancel the season. That's absolutely not true. No one I know is saying anything like that. As soon as it's safe, we would like to finish our season. I'm ready. Our team is ready. Nobody should be canceling anything." And, well, I agree with him on that. They do still have some time. There is a point you get to where you look at and you say, it just can't be done. And I want them to try. I want them to at least make an effort in trying to finish this season, but not do it at all costs where it's going to affect next season and season after that, because say you pick it up in mid-August and then that pushes next season all the way back until like January, February, something along those lines. And then the NBA calendar is screwed up forever. I mean, if this is going to get done, it has to be done. They have to start a training camp in June. Now, the more I look at the NBA standings, it wouldn't be outrageous if they just said to hell with the rest of the regular season and went right to the postseason. But they got to get these players into basketball shape. They got to give them at least that 3 weeks of working out in team activities, because they're opening some of the training facilities this week in places that have decided to rush in laxing their stay-at-home orders. But not all, they're not going to be allowed to do team activities. And that's not not every team has that same benefit here. And I've said this before. As much as he may want to finish the season, I understand he wants to finish the season because he's got one of his best teams as far as supporting cast over his career. They were first in the West. Though he views an opportunity at winning a championship here with Anthony Davis, who knows what his long-term future is as far as remaining with the Lakers. And even though LeBron continues to amaze us, he is 35 years old. He's he has less games. He has more games behind him than he does have ahead of him. He knows that the clock is ticking just like it ticks on everybody. He still probably has another 3-4 years left in the tank. But does he have that 3-4 years left in the tank at an MVP caliber level, at the level that we were watching him play this year, where it was a debate between him and Giannis Antetokounmpo on who the league MVP is so far this year? So it's as I said a couple weeks ago, I'll continue to say, I understand him wanting to finish this year at all feasible, but I don't like when I see him putting out these comments like, oh, I need closure, making this an about him scenario. All right, I've said it before. LeBron, it's the NBA. It's not the LJBA. It's not all. You're still one of the top players in the sport. I don't think he's undisputedly the top player in the sport anymore. I do think there are arguments you can have about other players having as close to or better a year than him. And the distance as far as talent levels started to creep up there with him. But they can't just finish the season at all costs just because you wanted to. There may come a point where you just have to say, it ain't going to happen. And I saw this rumor, and I believe me, as one of the 9 Brooklyn Net fans that are out there, maybe there's more than that. Maybe there's like 75 of us. The true Brooklyn Net fans that were fans of the team when they were in Jersey and remained fans of the team now that they've been in Brooklyn the last 7 years. I saw these comments start to come out in the New York Post today. About Sean Marks, the GM, potentially hinting at Kevin Durant playing this year if the NBA season does resume. Talking about how, that's the $110 million question. We've tried not to talk about it a lot, but saying before the pandemic, he looked like Kevin Durant and was looking really good. And that's coming on the heels of his manager, Rich Kleiman's comments a couple weeks ago to Sports Illustrated, saying that in his it's his assumption that it's very unrealistic, as he put it, that Kevin would be able to return this summer. Believe me, the thought of this has creeped into my mind, and while it would be, you'd probably view it as beneficial to the Nets, having all of a sudden they're the 6th, 7th seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs, and here comes, one of the best players in the world that hasn't even played for them this year, and he suddenly just parachutes into the playoffs. The problem is, he would have a training camp to get ready for that. But all of a sudden, he'd be playing in big games, the big moment, and it would be putting a taxing on his body that he's not ready for. I more than anyone just want to see him back on a court, but I don't want him rushing into high intensity, high pressure games right away. I wanted, that ease in period for him starting next season, like what the Raptors did 2 years ago with Kawhi Leonard, where you're taking it easy with him. He's not playing back-to-back, both ends of a back-to-back early on. And you could slowly build up his minutes there. Not where you're already asking him to go out there and play 30 minutes a night in a playoff game, because, he's a competitor. Kevin Durant, he wants more than anything just to get back on the basketball court. He doesn't want to deal with the rest of the nonsense, the rest of the crap, which is why he's been heavily criticized at times over the years. He wants to go out there and continue to perfect his craft. So, if you throw him in there in the middle of the playoffs, he's not going to take it easy. He's not going to ease into it. he's going to try and go full speed. And what I worry about is him going full speed in games of that importance when he doesn't have hasn't had NBA gameplay in almost a year now, and that potentially leading to another injury. Then you have a situation where the entire length of the contract with the Nets is nothing but injury problems riddled with that, and you never get the full Kevin Durant experience. So while it's fun to think about, I personally hope that does not happen. Would benefit the league, getting one of their best players back, one of their biggest stars back, but I don't know if it really benefits the long-term health of the Brooklyn Nets if Kevin Durant was to come back this season, if this season is to be completed during the summer. All right, I'm going to take another break here, come back on the other side, turn my attention to the NFL because there was plenty of quarterback news over the last couple of days. Continue keeping it sports with M3. Just as I said, saving the segment, and then we can get going here on the next segment. Because this is, as I said earlier, it's surprising how much there is still to talk about, even with no live sports going on. But it's very therapeutic to me. Gets my mind off of this crazy time right now. And that's all we're really asking for. We miss what I called the toy store. That's what the sports world was and will be to us once again. You miss it, I miss it, and it takes our minds off things, takes our minds off the important stuff in life just for a couple hours, gives us a moment to laugh, cheer, be angry, mad at something that in the long run isn't that important, but we realize how important it is to our lives when we don't have it with us at this moment. Okay, let's get going. All right, back more keeping it sports with M3. Now, the 2017 NFL draft was an interesting draft. It's been still a very much talked about draft because of what was one of the more controversial draft picks that night. When the Chicago Bears traded up from 3 to number 2 overall to select quarterback Mitchell Trubisky. And why that's become so controversial is the fact that they traded up one spot to a guy that most viewed as a middle to back end of the first round draft pick. And 2, when you consider the other quarterbacks that were taken later in that first round, with the Chiefs trading up to draft Patrick Mahomes and the Texans drafting Deshaun Watson. So here you have one team trade up to draft a soon-to-be MVP and eventual Super Bowl winner. Another team drafts a quarterback that, in my mind, will be a league MVP. And, while he's not at that level of Mahomes yet, in the years to come, if he eventually gets a good head coach, we're going to be talking about him and Mahomes, hopefully at that level that we used to talk about Peyton Manning and Tom Brady at together. That's how good Deshaun Watson is. And unfortunately for him, Trubisky has not lived up to that number 2 overall status, has not, come anywhere close to the level of efficiency, the level of play that those two have on the field. And it's led to him being the butt of many jokes, him being mocked, him being the Bears organization being ripped for selecting him, and people even speculating, oh, when or if are they going to replace him? Well, that speculation continues to grow when earlier this offseason they trade for Nick Foles from the Jaguars, and then add on top of that what happened in this last week. You're seeing a lot of the top draft picks from the first round of the 2017 NFL draft have the fifth-year option on their rookie contracts picked up. And unless I've missed something, he's been the lone one so far that had his fifth-year option decline. I think it was him and Leonard Fournette are the only two that have had those fifth-year options declined on their rookie contracts, which to me is spelling the end for Trubisky's time in Chicago. Yeah, he's under contract with them for one more year, but they declined the option and they trade for Nick Foles in the same offseason. Doesn't bode well for his long-term prospects there, especially, you have a veteran who's won a Super Bowl championship, and you have people there that have such stability in their job that they can admit to, hey, the organization made a mistake, and it's time to move on. Plus, if memory serves me correctly, I don't think Nagy was even the head coach there when they drafted Trubisky. So he has no locked in love for the guy. He's not married to having this guy as his quarterback for the long term, and probably wants to eventually find his own guy. And talking about long term quarterbacks, one of the big stories coming out of this year's draft was, of course, the Packers trading up to get Jordan Love in the first round. And we haven't heard from him, but it's had to infuriate Aaron Rodgers because they haven't drafted an offensive skill player since he was selected in the first round of the 2005 draft. Well, as things would turn out, and this surprises me here, over the last several years, him and his predecessor, the great Brett Favre, have actually developed a much better relationship. I don't want to say Brett hated Aaron, but there wasn't a closeness between the two of them when Brett was still playing because, hey, he was pulling this, am I going to retire? Am I not going to retire thing there for about 3 years, and the Packers got tired of that. And that's why they decided to draft Rodgers when he fell to them, because they wanted to get that long-term insurance. And he was annoyed because, I still feel I got years ahead of me, even if I'm considering potential retirement. Why aren't you drafting someone that can help me win right now? So that is what his bone contention. I don't think he outright hated Aaron personally. It's just, here you are bringing in my successor when I still want a chance at winning something here. So they've developed a better relationship over the last several years. And, Favre probably talks to Rodgers, I don't want to say on a regular basis, but a somewhat regular basis. So he wasn't afraid to make a comment last week when on the Rich Eisen show via CBS Sports Network. And when asked about this, he said that Aaron will not finish his career with the Green Bay Packers. And I don't think this is just Brett speaking out of turn. He's probably talked to Aaron. And Aaron probably knowing that, hey, Brett Favre, when he says something, his words matter. His words lead to conversation, lead to people talking and realize that, you know what, if Brett's going on doing the radio tour here, maybe I give him something to say to, passive aggressively show that I'm not happy here. I'm annoyed by this. And let's face it, you can see this marriage falling apart because, it's a head coach that did not draft him. And the organization, let's face it, like most people in his life, have gotten tired of his attitude over the years. I've been the first one to say this. I'm the first one to admit when I am wrong. Because I used to get annoyed with Aaron back in the early days after he took over for Brett. Because I would say, all right, yeah, he's come on, he's playing well in his first year or two here. But are we crowning this guy too early? And you know what? I had to take a step back there and say, hey, I was wrong. He won a Super Bowl within his first 2 years as the Packers starter. And on his third year, as their starter, he won the league MVP, leading his team to a 15-1 record before being upset by the New York Giants in the playoffs. But what I've maintained is the guy's kind of an ass. I mean, he doesn't take a lot of accountability for his poor play. It's when they lose, it's always we, us. When they win, it's a lot of me's, a lot of I's. Wants all the credit, but doesn't want any of the grief. And the Packers have probably gotten tired of that attitude, that mindset. Also, one anonymous GM last week said that this was their way of telling them that we run things, not you. So you can easily see this coming apart. I don't think this it took Brett Favre's comments saying that he won't finish his career with the Packers for everyone to be aware of this. But at this point, after what's happened the last couple weeks, I'd be surprised if he finishes his career in Green Bay. In fact, I've been saying this the last couple days, that I know the next location for Aaron. I know where it's going to be. Because, while he probably doesn't hate Green Bay, because the fan base there has treated them like a god over the last 10 years, it's probably not fun spending that many months of your year in such a cold climate. That's why I will say this right now. Within 2 years, mark this down, within 2 years, Aaron Rodgers will be the starting quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. That's right. Boom. Yeah. Pipe bomb. I'm dropping that. Right now, Aaron Rodgers will eventually be traded to the San Francisco 49ers. And hell, it's not crazy. They were looking into, signing Brady in free agency. John Lynch admits they talked to Tom. And hell, I know they have Jimmy locked up, but the guarantee money on that contract's almost done. They could get out of that within the next 2 years. They were terrified of him in the playoffs. How many times did he throw the ball per game, especially against the Packers? 8, 9 times there? They made sure that he was not the reason that they lost. That he was just a bystander as they marched on to the Super Bowl. So, it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world if they decided in another 2 years move on from Garoppolo and trade for Aaron Rodgers when he still has a little bit left in the tank. Because Rodgers has talked about, doing the same thing Brady's doing, playing until his 40s, talking about playing until that point where he's essentially carried off the field. Now, another quarterback that's got to be getting a little bit annoyed here, and maybe this is just stories made up by the media. But it's becoming very contentious between the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott. So much so that he hasn't signed his franchise tag tender yet. He still wants that long-term deal. And the Cowboys have only offered him really two options. Either sign the franchise tag that would pay him $31 million next year, or sign a 4-year contract at a price that we feel more comfortable with, that maybe is not in the ballpark of what you want. And I've remained on the Dak Prescott side of this throughout this entire contractual debate, because I don't view him as that quarterback that can carry you to a Super Bowl, but I view him as more than just a bystander, more than just a guy that's a game manager. He needs the pieces around him, and he's got those pieces, with Amari Cooper, with Michael Gallup, with them drafting CeeDee Lamb. Still got a very strong offensive line, even without Travis Frederick. But he's a guy that's shown over his career that he is an accurate quarterback. He can win you a lot of games. Hell, has won a playoff game in his first 4 years. And when you look at what his peers are getting paid at the position, if you want to keep this guy long term, you're going to have to match that or go above that. It goes against something that I've always believed in. It goes against a theory that I've always disliked, because there's been this theory out there that, every time a quarterback's a free agent and you see them get paid the big bucks, that it's, they're just the next one in line. And I've always hated that. I've always disliked that. And there was that group of, Derek Carr, Andy Dalton, Matthew Stafford, that they all of a sudden start getting paid, in the neighborhood of $25 to $27 million. Jimmy Garoppolo, before playing a full season worth of games, got a contract paying him north of $27 million. And then you see Goff and Wentz get their long-term deals there. So, Dak Prescott is at least in that company of quarterbacks, so he should be getting paid amongst those guys, even though I disagree with the theory of they're just the next quarterback up. But now the Cowboys have done what in some people's minds is a move to piss Prescott off. I think is actually a kind of a prudent move, something that you don't see a lot of teams do, and that's make sure you have quality at the backup quarterback position. Not that you're just picking somebody up off the streets, some ham and egger that you see playing football on a back lot somewhere that probably shouldn't be on an NFL field. No, after Andy Dalton was released by the Bengals the other day, they waited for him to clear waivers, and they signed him to a 1-year, $7 million contract. And I think it's a very prudent move because, yes, Dak Prescott, of all of his abilities, his best ability has been his availability. He's 64 for 64 in games played and started over the course of his career. The one time that there's been any question about that was going into week 17 last year. He missed a practice due to soreness in his shoulder. Other than that, he's been nothing but a reliable quarterback as far as his availability is concerned. But at some point, every quarterback takes that shot where you wonder, are they going to get up from that? So I look at this as a prudent move. You're not looking at Dalton to come in and take his job. No, Dak probably looks at it as like, what the hell are you doing here? You're bringing in the guy that's been a starter in this league to be my backup, and now I got this hanging over my shoulder. But it's just an insurance policy. That's all it is. They're not looking to take the job away from Dak Prescott here. And no, Andy Dalton, I'll admit it, over the 8 years of this podcast, has been the butt of a lot of jokes on here. Mostly because of the fact that he's been atrocious in the playoffs. 0-4, thrown a lot of interceptions, has one touchdown pass in those 4 postseason games. Him, along with Marvin Lewis, is the butt of a lot of jokes. But they made Cincinnati Bengals football relevant for 5 years there. They went to the playoffs 5 years in a row. And when you compare that to the dumpster fire they were for years before that, they deserve some credit for that. You know, I've made some comments like saying, "Oh, you expect to be a winning team, but you bring in Andy Dalton." That's like expecting to be a winner in Major League Baseball and bringing in Buck Showalter as your manager. But there's no denying Andy Dalton, when on the field, has led his team to wins more times than not. You know, last year, notwithstanding, that team was god-awful, and we all felt they were trying to tank, except for when they were playing the Jets. But, no, his first 5 years in the league, nothing but winning. They made the playoffs every year. And, no, there could come that point where Dak takes a hit that he doesn't get up from, or if he continues this holdout, continues this expecting that long-term contract, which he does deserve to get, and say doesn't show up for training camp on time, holds out into the preseason, and then halfway through the preseason all of a sudden shows up, he's not exactly completely in football shape yet. He's not exactly in prime football playing condition, and that could potentially lead to an injury there. I mean, we've seen it plenty of times with these guys who hold out in training camp or hold out in the preseason. All of a sudden they show up and they get hurt in the first couple of weeks of the regular season. So you might as well have an insurance policy behind them. I don't blame the Cowboys for this move. And no, I understand where Des Bryant is coming from in the comments that he made the other day on Twitter, talking about, he saw Tony get paid twice without a winning record, saying that the Cowboys must view the QB position as a plug and piece because of the dominant offense. Well, no, obviously he doesn't care about the potential of eventually getting back to the Cowboys. He must think that chance is over. He's trying to defend his guy here. But no, it's not out of line making sure you have an insurance policy. So no, I don't blame the Cowboys for this. I'm not even gonna give Donovan McNabb's comments about this the time of day. That's just a waste of everybody's time. He's trying to make this an issue that it's not. But I can't blame the Cowboys on this one. They've handled the negotiations with Dak awfully. But they've done a good job here as far as roster construction and making sure they got that backup plan in place just in case there's an injury or Dak holds out into the season. Now, one thing before I take a break here, I'd be remiss if I did not, take a moment to acknowledge the passing of Pro Football Hall of Famer Don Shula, passing away earlier this morning at the age of 90, which, hats off to him on 90 years old. That's great, long, fulfilling life. Wish for his sake he would have got to live to 100, but, I think all of us would love to live to 90 and not have too many complaints about it, especially the life he lived. Being an NFL Hall of Famer, being considered one of the great coaches in NFL history, not just for his years with the Dolphins, and that's what most of us remember him for, being the Dolphins head coach for 26 years and retiring when he was only 65 years old, which seems young by today's standards, with Belichick still going in his late 60s. Hell, I think, wasn't Mike Holmgren still coaching into his late 60s? And Andy Reid, he's in his early 60s, but looks like he's got it, but is a very young 61, I think it is, and he looks like he's still got a whole lot of time ahead of him. But Don Shula, or people forget, was the head coach of the Baltimore Colts from 63 to 69. Took them to Super Bowl III, where they eventually lost to the New York Jets. He would get another crack at the Super Bowl, losing to the Cowboys in 71, before winning back-to-back titles in 72 and 73, which included, in 72, them going 14-0, en route to being the first and only undefeated team in NFL history, winning a championship. And he gets to, unfortunately, his life ends today, but he goes to his grave knowing that he was the head coach of the only undefeated team in NFL history. Some Jet fans older than myself hold resentment against him for the fact that he was on the competition committee, and in 82, the week leading up to that AFC championship game between the Jets and Dolphins down in Miami, he left the tarp off the field, creating what they call the infamous Mud Bowl there. But there's no denying how great of a coach this guy was. Hell, he gets left out of the all-time great coaches conversation sometimes, and I think it's just because he won the 2 titles early, but never came back and won another one. Because they go to the Super Bowl that year, 82-83, with Marino, lose that game to the Redskins, and they never got back again. Him and Marino never had another shot at glory like that, and that is probably the only thing that keeps people out from talking about him, about how great of a coach he was. But you look at the track record, you look at the numbers, there's no denying his greatness. So deepest condolences to the Shula family, and rest in peace, Don Shula. You go to your grave, as I said, knowing you coached the only undefeated team in NFL history. Just 1 minute, just trying to save this last spot, and then we can finish things up here. Hold on, it's coming. Trying to. All right. Come on. Just waiting for this last. We can finish this up. All right, here we go. Finish up talking about some baseball. Right. A couple more minutes here, but a few more things I want to express before I close out for the night. Now, this has been one of the most controversial debates in all of sports when it comes to college sports, not just football, basketball, baseball, all of them, paying the players. And I've always been on the side of, no, do not give them a salary, because for most of them, they're going to school for free. Hell, a lot of them don't even finish out their education at the school. They'll leave. For those that are going to be going pro, they leave early. And I have no problem with that, because if you're good enough to make money off yourself playing that sport, you should decide to go early. And if later on you can finish your education, whether it be via online or going back to school if the athletic endeavors don't work out. But my big bone of contention has always been, why should the school make profit off of that player's name, likeness, and image, but the player can't? And it leading to all of this nonsense where every time a player, say, signs an autograph or sells a piece of their memorabilia to help support their family, all of a sudden it's some ridiculous violation from the NCAA, and you're seeing wins taken away, you're seeing titles taken away, you're seeing that player suspended from games if they remained at the school. You lead to a whole bunch of ridiculousness here. Well, last week, the NCAA announced that they're going to allow players to now hire third-party agents to represent them and allow them to profit off their name, image, and likeness, meaning that their name on T-shirts or posters, being on their image on those posters, signing their autograph, or in the case of a likeness, being featured if I'm not sure if they still do this, but if college sports gets back into the video game world, and you can actually have the players of names on there rather than just have, say, like the quarterback, and his name is number 12. And you hear no acknowledgement of that player's actual name. Like that. I love that. They should be able to profit off themselves while they're playing, because who knows? This could be it for some of these guys. About 90% of them, probably more, are not going pro. So if they have a chance to make a little buck off the field, off of them playing, so be it. That it shouldn't just be the school that profits off of them. Yes, that they get a free ride in college, and I don't want there to be some kind of salary structure because of the whole Title IX rule. It just lead to a whole lot of messiness. Your scholarship, that is your salary. You compared to the 99% of kids that are going to school out there don't have to struggle in finding a way to pay for your education. You get it, room, board, meals. You get all of that for free, unlike most others. So they don't need to be paid by the school, but they should be able to profit off the field by their own likeness. It's never been a fair scenario, and I'm glad that there's finally some justice taking place here. Now, the final thing I want to talk about today is, of course, Major League Baseball, the potential for them having a season. And I've tried to remain positive, tried to remain optimistic. And I look at them almost in the same boat that I look at with the NFL. The NFL still has a lot of time on their hands. Their season does not get underway until, what is it? I think it's September 7th, if I've got my dates correctly there. Maybe a little bit later than that. But somewhere in that first week of September, they get their season underway. So they don't have to make a decision about postponements or even potentially cancellations anytime soon. NBA and the NHL, we're about a month away before them having to truly make a decision. But Major League Baseball, they still got some time on their hands here. We're only a month into what would have been their season. Unfortunately, it's hurting me emotionally just because baseball is my favorite sport, and being the big Yankee fan I am, I was looking forward to finally seeing Garrett Cole in pinstripes. Another year of Aaron Judge, Gleyber Torres, Gary Sanchez, the return of Miguel Andujar, along with that awesome bullpen that they have put together. Plus, as you know, you don't go through the entire course of a 162-game season with your original starting five. There's always double headers in there. There's always an unfortunate injury along the way. So there would be the chance to see some of the Yankees' highly touted pitching prospects that people talk about. That's always something that's exciting for any fan base, any team that you root for, seeing the kids come up and get that first crack at the big leagues. But, for now that's been taken away, and wondering when the potential season could get started. They, unlike NBA and NHL, as I said, still have some time on their hands here, and there's been all sorts of kooky ideas about ideas of starting the season late June, early July. Of course, they'd have to have another 3-week spring training and probably have to extend the rosters to start the season. But after this last week, I am feeling confident that there's going to be a baseball season in some shape or fashion. We, the fans, are probably not going to be physically in person to view it. Our viewing is going to be on TV for the entire season. But you know what? That's okay. That's okay. I will continue to stress this. Something is better than nothing. Some baseball is better than no baseball. And if we can get to our country to a point with all the testing that continues to grow in place, continue to get to a point where it lessens the burden on our medical system, and also people forget, the involvement of our local police departments and fire departments as far as helping continue create social distancing, the role they play in all of this. As long as we can get to a point where none of the essential workers are affected by this, and it's not interfering in any way, then let's get going. Let's get the baseball season started. Why not? At least try. That's all I'm asking for. At least try. Don't just, there are people who are already coming out and saying, they should just cancel the season. Why? Well, it's one thing if we get to September and the season hasn't started yet, then it's like, all right, it's a wash. We'll see you in 2021. But we just started May on Friday. You still got time to play with here. I would love a scenario, and this is just my dream scenario. Opening day on Independence Day, the 4th of July, the heartbeat of our country, that be the start of America's game, the opening day of America's pastime. That would be phenomenal to see that happen. There are some hurdles we still got to cross, but I think it's possible. And No, I like this idea that they presented out there 3 divisions. You have the American League East and the National League East stick together. The American League and National League Central stick together and just play each other, as well as the American League and National League West stick together. And you just play those 9 teams in your division and your local counter division. That reduces travel. And the idea that was presented, the 2 ideas presented of it. One, you put the East teams in Florida, the Central teams in Texas, and the West teams in Arizona. Problem there is, in a lot of cases, these players are going to have to be quarantined away from their families for 4 months, and that's led to some backlash. Not a lot of backlash, but some backlash from players not being able to have their families around as they go through a potential season. But another idea that's been thrown out there, and I think it could work out, it's going to take some time, but I definitely could see it working out, is you have them play in their home ballparks without the fans, but you just, as I said, you travel amongst your league's division and the opposing league's local division. American League, you would see a lot of the Yankees playing the Mets, or the Yankees playing the Braves, the Red Sox and Blue Jays playing the likes of the Marlins and the Nationals. You'd see a lot of that. In the Central, you'd see a lot of Cubs versus White Sox, as the White Sox continue to march up as a team that people had expectations on this year, while the Cubs are coming off a disappointing year with a new manager in place. You'd see a lot of the West Coast teams seeing each other a lot. Every night you'd have a California versus California situation, whether it be Giants A's, Dodgers Angels, Padres Angels, along those lines there. So I think that if we can get this going by July, it can work out. I'm not ready to just give up on the baseball season 1 month into it being postponed. And that's what it is. It's been postponed. It hasn't been canceled. None of these things have been canceled. I don't want to be of that quitter's mindset where, let's just give up, let's move on. If it can be done, and it's probably a big if, but if it can be done, at least try. At least make every effort, every attempt to get these seasons, especially Major League Baseball, underway under some shape, form, or fashion. And that, my friends, was Keeping It Sports with M3 for Monday, May 4th, 2020. Everyone have a great night, and I'll talk to you guys again same time next week. And remember, please, stay safe, stay healthy, try to stay home as much as possible. We're going to get through this just one day at a time. Peace.